Well, to speak more on this, let's now welcome Professor David Thomson, transplant specialist and critical care surgeon at UCT and Groote Schuur Hospital. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. So when you consider how more than 4,000 or so people in the country are waiting for a life-saving organ, this initiative does sound life-changing. Speak to us about just how significant this Lifepod or intensive care unit is for donors.
So I think it's a really great initiative to see what students can achieve to promote awareness about donation. It's a challenging space. We struggle more in terms of the consent process before, and I think it's often used as a reason not to engage with families at end of life, that we don't have a space. So I'm really interested to see if this project can help drive donation at Tygerberg and give it an impetus, because it's an often used reason. And when we have a consented donor, we will move heaven and earth to help make sure those life-saving benefits are transmitted to other people, and we can honor that gift that the family has made. But I find that the strain in the system is really tough, because there are all these competing priorities. But one of the main competing priorities, I think we need everyone to be offering good end-of-life care and counseling to families, because no matter what your consent system is around the world, if a family objects to donation, you actually don't proceed. Our organ donor registry is an expression of intent, and it does make the conversation easier with a family when you can say, well, what would this person have wanted to happen in this tragic situation? And it always is a tragic situation. So yes, it's a really positive step. It's amazing to see students run with it, and I really hope it does translate into more donors being consented and managed appropriately to maximize the gift that they've been giving.
I mean, what is even more fascinating is firstly the name of the NGO. It's how each organ donor has the potential to save 7 lives, with major organs, as we've been saying in our introduction, and assist a further 52 others with tissue donation. Speak to us about the current situation. You mentioned, of course, that there are challenges, particularly as it relates to consent. Just give us the sort of the lay of the land as it's relates to donors in the country at the moment. How does that current scenario look like in terms of just the challenges?
So we have a network of trained nurse requesters, so transplant coordinators, and they really are specialist communicators who can sit down with a family, spend the time needed to engage in that process. I think what we need to move to is a little bit more of a shared approach, because if you have a counseling discussion with a family and you want to debrief with your team afterwards, if you've done it in isolation, you can't actually reflect and say, what could we have done better next time in engaging and supporting a family. So we're trying to promote with our training courses that the referring team, the team that's breaking the bad news to the family, that they're also a part and share that responsibility, because if we treat it as two separate things, we create a very big gap in the system. So that's the network that we have, and we cover across platforms, across provinces. There's a really good synergy in transplant to try and make it happen. But we know as a country, we only get about 1 donor per million population. And if you look at the UK, they get about 24, and Spain manages to get about 47 donors per million population. So it really is about the culture you create, about supporting donation throughout all your healthcare institutions, and that they can feed into a network that supports it. So having a place at Tygerberg to help, but it's not a prerequisite to being able to help. Anyone who's ventilating a patient is actually able to promote a donor. We had one from Knysna District Hospital, so 600 kilometers away, and that was just an engaged clinician and a supportive family. And it is possible to make it happen.
And just in terms of, the organs themselves, just speak to us about that space. Where is the need? I mean, when we consider that so many people are waiting for the life-saving organs, particularly when you start talking about your major organs. And then, of course, we have about, tissue donation. We have a potential here for one donor to effectively help about 52 people, we're being told.
So in terms of the biggest need is for renal transplants, because actually we have dialysis to keep patients with that organ failure alive. If you think about heart, lung, and liver transplant, we don't really have machines that can keep people alive long enough on the waiting list. So those waiting lists are unfortunately shorter. And then there's a very definite need for pediatric donors, because if you think of a heart or a lung, it needs to fit inside a pediatric recipient. So then it has to be a size match as well. So I would say pediatrics and adolescents have a great need in South Africa that we need to support donation, and that's an even more emotional discussion with parents at the end of life. And then to give you a scale of like corneal transplants, Groote Hospital and Tygerberg will do on average 1 corneal transplant per week, which means a blind person is able to see. And if you wanted to think about it, your cornea is just a thin layer like your thumbnail that comes off. They dignify, close the eyes afterwards, and it's such a simple thing. It's not disfiguring, and it's just that thin layer from the front of the eye that can make such a huge difference to a blind person. And we've been importing those corneas from overseas. Other countries have been able to sort out their donation rates that they have extra. But South Africa, we need to promote tissue donation a lot more, because there's a lot of benefits, the bone and the skin for the burns. And again, it comes down to children who are the ones who are getting burnt the most. So it really makes a life-saving difference for skin. That one's actually really life-saving, not just life-altering.
And in terms of provinces, is there a way that you are monitoring, in fact, where the greatest need may be, and where you are getting that reluctance, from people to actually consent?
So we don't have a very good registry in terms of tracking this. We did have a meeting with National Department of Health this past weekend, and they had a donation launch where the National Department and the Minister are expressly stating, look, as a country, we support donation and this has benefits. And then in terms of, I'm just trying to think, in terms of monitoring it, we do have a renal registry that looks at that data for the need, and then we allocate within provinces for kidney transplants, and then we allocate on a national basis, because those patients with heart, lung, and liver urgently need it, and if they don't get it, they'd be passing away. So we have a priority national system that works across all the provinces for that.
Prof, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming through. Professor David Thomson, transplant specialist, and critical care surgeon at UCT and Groote Schuur Hospital, of course, talking to us there about this initiative by Stellenbosch University students who initiated this project that will now be affected in Tygerberg Hospital in Cape Town.